to help them.
So, hi guys. Teresa, how are you?
Oh, you
Good, how are you?
Very well. Your hair is different than the last time I saw you.
Yep,
It looks nice.
thank you.
We are gonna wait a little bit longer to see if other people trickle in. It's a small committee, but we are still waiting for, Keith's gonna be late and actually,
Ryder's here.
and Ryder's here and Rachel's here, so we can start. But as soon as Ryder comes back, the room will start. Rachel, I haven't seen you in such a long time. And it's in person especially. Here, why don't you sign in? Ryder, you can sign in too. I'm gonna turn this off.
Arturo is a new member.
Oh, but he's not on my list. He's not on my
Yeah.
district.
I'm just joining as a visiting. I just wanted to listen and
okay.
see how things are going.
I can
Members are encouraged to attend.
Oh, I don't see your camera, but I also don't see him among attendees.
So click on panelists.
Oh, I see him on Colonel. Okay, got it. But I see if I did the view differently, maybe gallery. Yeah, I don't know why I don't see Arturo.
So
Oh, there he is. No, I don't know where you are. Tony.
go up to view,
Yeah,
click on that. Now see where it says, show non-video participants.
yeah.
That will give you the full range of
okay.
people who are not on camera.
Great. That's great.
Yeah, I'm also just having dinner, so I don't want to like eat
That's
on
quite
camera.
all right. Thank you for joining us. Okay, hi everybody. We're going to start. Welcome to the May meeting of the Human Services Committee of CB2 at 6:33, and we're going to get going. We have two agenda items tonight. The first is a conversation with Teresa Concepcion, who is, those of us here can see, is on the lower left, who runs the Red Door Pantry, and I didn't realize also has some news. And then later we're going to be joined by Darren Block, who runs the Greenwich House. Both of you have been to our meetings before. Darren more often. Teresa, we first met you through a meeting here. We don't expect to write a resolution from tonight, but we've given ourselves the flexibility to decide if we want to do that. The main purpose of our meeting is that every fall, we write a list of budget requests to the city, and we write a narrative that is the statement of needs, which is essentially a description of our district, and we contribute to the human services aspects of that. So we're just sort of cycling through everyone who serves our community. And as I said, we don't have any formal presentation. We'll just be asking you a bunch of questions, and there are very few participants, so it won't be a difficult meeting. We'll have lots of opportunities for people to ask questions. So first, we'll just introduce ourselves. On the committee, I'm Susanna Aaron. I'm the chair of the committee.
I'm Zach Zaz, committee member.
There he is.
Rachel Yarmolenski, a public member.
Hi, I'm Ryder Kessler. I'm a committee member.
I'm Emma Smith, I'm also a committee member.
And so Keen Berger is on our committee and is expected to arrive late. Ritu Chatri is on our committee, but she's injured her knee and was hoping to join by Zoom. We'll see if she's able to show up. And that is it. Okay. So, and what we're going to do is we'll start talking, and then we'll talk to Darren, and then we're going to go into business session where we'll discuss these topics and some other things, that everyone is welcome to stay. But at that point, we won't entertain any conversation from outsiders from our committee. So I'll kick it off. So Teresa, tell us, you run the Red Door Pantry, which you have done since 2020, so 24 years.
Yeah.
We have I'm interested in a bunch of different things. Obviously, I'm interested in the work on the food pantry, but maybe let's start with this new initiative that I just saw, which is this Bridging the Gap mental health support program. Can you tell us about that?
Sure. We identified.
One second. I'm gonna stop because I forgot to ask you to introduce yourself. So will you introduce yourself first and then launch into it?
Sure. So my name is Teresa Concepcion. I am the executive director of both the Red Door Place and our new program, which is Bridging the Gap, and we call it BTG. I've been doing this actually for 9 years, first as running the smaller program for the church. And then in 2020, it became my baby with all its headaches and wonders. And it has evolved and changed and grown. And we're excited in the direction that we're heading.
So the church is the Church of the Village on 13th Street and 7th Avenue. And this was originally part of the church, but now it's broken away. You have your own funding sources and your own governance. Tell us, if you would, I guess, first just a little bit background on the food pantry. How many people are you serving? How many meals do you serve? What do you see among your population? What changes are you seeing? Blah, blah.
Okay, so it's changed a lot. When I first started, we were serving maybe 190 people 9 years ago. Through the pandemic, we thought we hit a number that was at its highest, which we were serving about 1,000 people a week. But now we're serving the soup kitchen about 1,500 a week. And the food pantry is a little above 7,000 a week.
God,
We only run on Tuesdays and Saturdays. So it's a lot of people in a very short period of time.
oh,
And who is coming to the food pantry? And is that population shifting at all?
So we're citywide, so I will take anyone from any part of the city. We don't turn anyone away. But having said that, the number of people that are coming has grown. We have asylum seekers. We have people from Venezuela, from Russia, Ukraine, Senegal. We're starting to get a lot of Senegalese who seem to have need connections with the LGBTQ community. And we direct them to services and places they can go to that are actually very near to us, including the center across the street from us. So I'm happy to be able to do that, but it just adds, 3 new languages that we have to be able to speak in. Thankfully, we do have volunteers from the different language backgrounds that are able to help us translate and get the information they need out there. The demographics are still Chinese. There's still Spanish American that have lived there generations, seniors, African Americans, Egyptians have started to sprout. And like I said, the other demographics. So it's very diverse, it's very rich. And we're excited to meet people where they are and be able to give them the advantages of what we offer.
First, I'm going to tell everyone here, if you want to ask a question, just raise your hand. It's a small group. And I want to introduce Ritu Chatri, who is the vice chair of our committee, who busted her knee and has a reason to be home tonight. I'm interested, we see a lot of people in our neighborhood who seem to suffer from mental illness and substance use and homelessness. And I'm wondering if that population has a presence either in the food pantry or in the soup kitchen. I imagine that people who are coming to the food pantry are people with homes and the means to cook, right? Whereas people who are coming to the soup kitchen may not have those means. So
it used to be very clear, the lines of who came to which part of the program. It is changing. We do have the asylum seekers coming to get a hot meal on Saturdays, but the need for supporting mental illness has grown through the pandemic, and it's something that I identified that we needed to figure out how to help. I didn't want to reinvent the wheel. It took me 2 years of meeting all the time to figure out what we could do, not break any HIPAA laws, not open a mental health clinic, because that's, when we first sat down, that's kind of the conversation that started all of this. And it turned into creating a referral center for the mental health community, because it is a community. It's a whole bunch of people from all walks of life. And the mental health is an umbrella. Yes, it is the suicide, the people that are diagnosed with mental health illnesses, but it's also just everybody. A senior that is slowly losing their ability to remember things, renewing a prescription, finding a pharmacy that's open. Nothing is really completely up to date. Finding a different place to eat food if they can't show up at our place on a Saturday or a Tuesday. So it became this much richer program than just the mental health illness. The volunteers that we call them coordinators, are trained between the Department of Mental Health and food bank to be able to deal with anything that can come across our desk that we can make referrals for. We've had 2 people come in that were suicidal, and we helped them connect with people that could help them through 988. And just
988 is the hotline for mental health support. Okay.
yeah, and it's very effective. So far we are very happy with it. We also have a database that we got through Food Bank through a 10 network that they have, and we're able to tap into organizations within the community or within the city that will be able to help them, as long as it's things that we can handle. There's always the elephant in the room of jobs and housing that none of us can fix. But there are organizations that help to prevent homelessness by helping with rent that hasn't been paid and stuff like that. So BTG was launched in May, actually, the beginning of this month. And we have 4 coordinators, 1 facilitator who is the person who kind of triages where to send someone for help, because the goal is to create and lower anxiety, to make sure that people are not feeling more anxious than when they walked in. So far, so good. We've had I'd say about 30 people in the last 3 weeks. It operates during the pantry, so that someone that comes for pantry can also come for support or help at the same time.
Do you have clients that come only for that are aware of this service and come only for the mental health support? Or is it more that people who come to the pantry or the soup kitchen reveal some need for mental health support and you guys sort of siphon them off to get that care?
So what we did, we used the Plentiful app, and we sent out messages introducing the program and being able to kind of explain why we're there and what we're there for. And it was important to do it within hours that people are familiar with. We've been doing these hours forever, so it's very familiar. If someone wants to come just for the mental health, they can. We have a separate line for that. We also have a closet now. We've set up the giving away clothing and stuff because it's a big need, especially with the asylum seekers, that they can go in and choose a couple of items, and it's very zen. We want them to be as calm as possible. And then there are people that walk in, they want pantry clothing, and they want to see a coordinator, and we make the arrangements. The facilitator takes basic information, assigns them to a coordinator. We have a little waiting area with a couple of chairs. They can sit and wait. So so far it's working very well. We have cubicles for privacy that they meet with coordinators. The coordinators have phones to be able to access all the resources that we have and computers. And eventually.
That's a lot of operation for how many on your staff? Are you the only person on your staff? Everything else is volunteers?
So I have 1, 2, 3. I have 4 staff people. They're part-timers. Some is for deliveries, some is for data entry, some is for helping me run the pantry lines. because we have the two-sided pantry for ready to eat, which is mostly for the homeless, and then the grocery side that is a much bigger operation. We have found that it has been a great advantage to have Plentiful to kind of get the word out, get questions from people, and then the coordinators and the facilitator, we have a tech guy who is kind of the floor supervisor, are all volunteers that have worked with us long-term. Some have wanted to work with us. We've interviewed, we've hired them with no money, but they're willing to do it for various reasons, experience, school, work hours that they need, whatever the reason, they're in there for the right reasons. So we found last week that I have to find another maybe 3 people that are willing to spend the 3 hours on Tuesdays, because the volume of people, it takes a long time to go through any system to get them connected with some help. It's
I
not a
wanted-
quick thing.
Sorry, I'm sorry to interrupt you. We had that lag because of Zoom. I wanted to ask you just a little bit of definition about the Plentiful app. I'm familiar with it, but I don't know that anyone here or who will read our report is. I remember when you came to us first time, the first time, which was the only time you've come to us, there was a question about you were interested in increasing your capacity.
Right.
And there was this app, and actually I volunteered with you,
Mhm.
get the app on board. And the app is provided to you for free by the food bank, right? Which is
Right.
your main contributor, your main donor, right?
Right.
And for those who don't know, the food bank provided help with the software, and they came and they set it up. But it was a little bit, at least when I was doing it, a little bit of a challenge to get everyone who comes to the food pantry to be comfortable using it. Most learned have phones, many of them given by the city, by administrative services, I think, but not everyone knew how to use them. So that is, I'm guessing that what you're saying is that app is really helping you.
It is. And what we do is I have 2 volunteers that will help people sign up who aren't familiar with how to download applications and how to navigate that particular application. We help them make the first appointment for the following week, and they are allowed to get a bag of groceries that first time they come if it's their first time getting onto the system. What is good about the system is that we also capture the demographics of where people are coming from, how large the families are, how often they go to other pantries. So we'll be able to use this for fundraising, because it's all about that data. That's all it is for the funders, and I totally understand it, but it is not easy to capture when you're talking to someone for 15 minutes and asking them how many people in your family, and so I can give them the number of bags. So this makes it a lot easier to capture that information. And the word has spread. They understand that they have to sign up for the application. We have lost some people that used to be regulars because they don't want a ready-to-eat bag. They want a grocery bag, and they refuse to download it and do what they need to do. But it has helped us sign more people on. Every week there's at least 550 individual signups, which represent anywhere for families from 4 to as many as 11 or 13. So the numbers of people we're serving are quite large.
Ryder, you had a question.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I just want to understand the kind of nuances. It sounds like clients don't have to use the app for ready-to-eat meals, and I imagine that they also don't have to use the app to access the soup kitchen, but that it's required for the grocery line.
Correct.
And so of the 7,000 people a week who come to the food pantry, are roughly 7,000 people actually using the app?
It's no, it's less, because we do still have a hybrid of a sign-in sheet for people that are walking up to the ready to eat part of the pantry. And it's usually people that are homeless, that are mentally ill at a place where they're not reachable. But they do understand they need food and they have to, sign a name, whatever the name is. For my audits, as long as I have equal number of people that have signed in different handwritings, the name doesn't really matter. So it's that dual line of people, of the types of people that come in. But the greatest majority are the grocery side, which is the one that we use for plentiful. And that is that final number.
That makes sense. And I guess the reason I was asking is because it sounds like Plentiful has been a good marketing tool for the BTG program.
Yes.
Imagine that the BTG program also would be very beneficial to the folks who say are coming for their ready to eat meals, who aren't using the app. So, I guess what's the best way to get the word out to those folks? Is it really just when they're there on the line? Or are there other outreach tools to broaden access to BTG? Although maybe you don't want to broaden access too quickly if there's really, if you need more staff to make it, operate at a speedy enough clip to serve the demand.
So one of the things that we've done is everyone who is trained as a coordinator is trained in all areas. So if we have a greater volume of people that need benefits, SNAP benefits or insurance, they're trained. So are the volunteers are also trained in the mental health, suicide prevention certification. We also have a lawyer on hand who we can't really do her job, but we can take down all the information for her so she can figure out what kind of lawyer support she needs. And then we have done, it's on our website, it's on our social media. We have a board outside every Tuesday so people can read the board. We have postcards that we give out. We did a very grown-up press release that we did for all the agencies, the donors, our partners, everyone. So everyone understands that we've added something new and exciting to the Red Door Place. And word of mouth is unbelievable.
Wow.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Zach.
thanks. Teresa, yeah, really impressive to hear this. And I walk by Red Door often when you're having your food pantries, and it is an impressive crowd and really impressive the number of people you're able to serve. It sounds like, you're basically providing services that are akin to a social worker would do in terms of getting referrals, evaluating needs, and making those, helping navigate people to the right services they would need. I'm curious, are you getting any funding directly from the city now? And do you have any existing partnerships that are direct partnerships, either with city organizations or other, either city agencies or other organizations, so that you can fast track, I might say, people into some of the benefits that you think they might be eligible for?
We do. We have a database of non-for-profit organizations and city agencies that we can tap into in case we can't do, let's say, SNAP benefits more than 10 in that one day. We can still connect them to other agencies that can do the SNAP benefits that they can go to. We try to keep it within the neighborhoods that they live in. So we'll ask them, would you rather go to the Bronx or to Brooklyn or Staten Island? And then we tap into that in that borough so that it's easy access. Because nothing's worse than if you have one two-way Metro card to figure out how to get to a second place outside of your home. So we've tried to think of everything. It took 2 years for us to figure this out, of meeting at least once a month. I called it, going back to the drawing board, or our social worker and psychologist that worked with me to kind of figure out all the ins and outs of this would sometimes say, no, we can't do that. We got to do this. We can do this or we can't do that. But we wanted to be sure to be able to offer legitimate help that is available. There's a lot of things out there that are dead zones. Organizations that are no longer around, people that aren't at those agencies that we try to call. So we did all that legwork.
Oh, my God.
We pretended we were the clients. I
Wow.
called 988. I had all the volunteers that speak different languages call 988 and pretend they only spoke their native language. We wanted to make sure that it was a real thing, that they would be able to get the help. And so far so good. I mean, there have things at some places that we've had to push to the side that we're not going to use, but we hope to grow our own database that of contacts that become partners, that will know each other and be able to name names and really grow the resources to be stronger and richer.
And you're doing this without hiring social workers, is that right?
So
You're-
we're not hiring anyone, but all the volunteers have backgrounds in social work, whether it's working in a high school, which is a scary place. I've had 3 kids. People that are clinical. The lawyer, she's still working, but she loves to volunteer. We have 1 psychiatrist. And then we have
They're
some
all volunteers.
benefits. Huh?
They're all volunteers.
They're all volunteers and they're all there.
The
So
reason I
we-
ask is that I'm sorry, we keep stepping on each other's
It's
lines.
okay, it's fine.
The reason I ask is that a lot of the social service providers that we've met have described difficulty in staffing. That finding social workers is very difficult and hiring them at the amount of money that they're able to pay them is very difficult. So I think it's very encouraging that you're finding these resources on a volunteer basis.
Yeah. So eventually we want to be able to pay all of these volunteers, if not a salary, at least a stipend within a year. Our grant writer has identified some possibilities of grants that we can get for this purpose. But we have to get through the first 6 months and actually prove that we can do this. So I'm doing it with by storing all the data so that we can bedazzle everyone and they can give us some money so we can keep going.
And Teresa, on that point, are you getting money directly from the city at all right now?
For this program? No.
Yeah.
For anything.
No. I get the DYCD grants that money, it was a big chunk that gets given to either United Way or Food Bank, depending on which year it is, and then they distribute that money for us. And it's pretty diverse, the kind of money the way we can use the money, but not for stipends or salaries or anything like that. We did get a grant for 40,000 2 years ago to be able to buy all the equipment, the tech stuff, cubicles, paper, printer, that stuff. We were able to get money to pay for all of that. So
Let's
that
talk
part
money
we
a
did
little
get
bit.
some money.
Let's talk money a little bit. What is your budget? And I also know that you receive a lot of donations in kind from the food bank, right? Your food is coming, you're not buying food. Food is coming from the food bank. Is that correct?
The food is coming from Food Bank, United Way, and City Harvest. Funding comes from United Way and Food Bank.
Got it. And what is your budget?
Our budget right now is about 340,000.
And that pays for you, your other part-time staff members.
Right, paper goods. Saturdays does cost money because they don't really give us let us use money for things like herbs and spices and certain vegetables. So it's very limited, and I'm a stickler about giving our Saturday crowd a healthy meal. So we do spend money on Saturdays. Also, the containers and the utensils are astronomical. It's mind-boggling how much money gets spent on paper goods. That is something else that isn't funded.
And where is your money coming from? Do you have private donors? Do you do fundraising events?
So
You don't
we-
have any city contracts, right?
No, we have a lot of private donors that really do support all of the actual money that we have to spend. Grace Church on on Broadway
Yep.
is actually a sponsor of ours, and they give us about $30,000 a year. And then there are private foundations that give us money, ones that have touch base with us through being volunteers, being in the neighborhood, having called us. Places that used to give a small amount of money are now giving us, nice big chunks of money. But it's always, it's always a struggle because you never know if the following year we're going to get that money. So it's a lot of hustling. It's the only way to describe it. It's a lot of getting on the phone, sending that letter of where we're at, where we're going, what we need. But this year was hard to get money. It was not as easy. We
Are
didn't
there
get
any
much,
city, sorry.
cash donations as we had the year before.
Sorry, I stepped on your line. You said you weren't getting as many, you didn't get as many cash donations as you did the year before. I'm sorry, I'm repeating that only because it will come up in the transcript, and the transcript is famously bad at hearing, so it's good.
Okay.
Thanks. Oh, damn, I was gonna say something. Oh, advocacy. So, it sounds like there are no city contracts for you, so there's no city agency for us to advocate money for you. Are there city or state policies that affect you that you want advocacy for? Or are you comfortable working within the lines that currently exist?
Can I
I
build?
mean,
Sorry, can I just build on that
Yes,
question?
please.
I think as you answer that, Teresa, I think in general, it would also be helpful to get a sense of what else would you want or need from the city, funding aside, in ways that are being unmet as you think about your space and your operations.
okay, so that is there probably are other budgets at the city and state level that we can tap into especially for the Bridging the Gap program, but we had to get it up and running. You have to have a little bit of track record before anybody gives you money, which is understandable. So I've given myself 6 months before I start knocking on doors for the program. But we also need simple things, if there's any funding out there that we could tap into for paper goods in the sense of ink, computer paper, office supplies. There's also a lot of empty office spaces in the city of New York. If we could tap into a space, doesn't have to be huge, but big enough that we can run this additional programming out of offices where there's more privacy, it'll probably be more comfortable. It's insane. We have 2,500 square feet and we're running the closet, the two-sided pantry, and the Bridging the Gap, all out of the same space for
And all
3
with
hours
only-
on Tuesdays.
And with only one full-time employee.
Yes, I end up running both, and I do the networking, and I advocate for what we're doing and how well we're doing it, and hopefully continue doing it. I really want to see this to become bigger than what it is right now. And that's going to involve, yes, money, but also office space. So it's something that if you could help us figure out if there is available office space that we could use, even if it is, 6 months to a year, that would be great, because it's very hard to maintain privacy and quiet when we're trying to hand out as many meals and bags of food as we do.
I wanted to invite any attendees who have questions to raise their hand. Okay, I just wanted to mention one thing, which is a non sequitur, but I remember that before you joined the Plentiful app, you were concerned about privacy issues, and you have talked about collecting demographic information from it and so on. So I just wanted to clarify that all of that demographic information that you collect is really does not invade anyone's privacy. You're not taking any down. It's just pure demographic information, not traceable to any single person. I just think that, yeah, Ryder.
Yeah, so I have a question about bridging the gap, or kind of a thought that maybe is a question. We hear periodically here in this committee from CUCS and folks contracted by the Department of Homeless Services to do outreach to unhoused folks in the community, particularly folks with mental illness issues. Like, is there an opportunity for a partnership to have their staff members who are paid or, you know, underpaid, but they do have people who are on payroll whose job is outreach to unhoused folks? Would it make sense to work with them or have them on site when the BTG is happening? Like, what kind of collaboration might be helpful to supplement your programming and also provide them a population of access that might be easier than when they're, you know, going street to street?
Absolutely. I think it's a perfect collaboration. The more hands-on we have, the more people we can reach, but also the more satisfied they're going to leave. And even if we don't fix the problems, but having them connected to places that can at least begin the process, besides, you know, the initial take-in centers, you know, the next steps is definitely a big help. A lot of the people that don't speak English, we've been able to connect them to the city colleges that offer ESL and GED for free. You know, it's not something that's as commonly known, especially with groups that are brand new in the country and in the city, but it is something that is a great program that the city colleges are offering. And because they're all over the city, it really makes it accessible and successful. So yeah, I would love to do that. I would love to be able to partner with any one of those.
Yeah, maybe we can help facilitate.
Yeah, maybe we can help
that.
facilitate. That's a great idea. So we've talked about donations and budget. We've talked about city contracts and policies. What about, just because we will be writing a report for our community, here and donation opportunities for the public? Do you want to recruit more volunteers, and if so, what kind? And let us know what kind of donations you would, I mean, obviously cash. Because I also mentioned the closet. So if you just share with us some opportunities for private support. Ritu, did you want to say something?
Sorry to interrupt. I said if she could tell us, Teresa, by the way, I just want to say you do incredible work. I see the lines for the food pantry, and it's just phenomenal, the work that you do.
Thank you.
I wanted to just ask, how much office space are you looking for?
I'm looking probably for the equivalent, I'd have to measure it, but the equivalent of maybe 6 small offices that are all closely in a close-knit area. So I don't know how many square feet that is. It's less than 1,000, that's for sure.
Okay.
And so back to private donations, in addition to cash donations, which obviously that would be pretty obvious, but are there volunteer opportunities?
At the moment, we are full. It gets full very quickly. People really, I already have Christmas and Thanksgiving booked.
Wow.
One is corporate, one is a church, a Grace Church that is one of our sponsors.
Congratulations. I mean, just coordinating those volunteers can't be easy, right?
No. And we do have on our website, if someone can email us if they want to come with a family or they have a corporate group. And we're on a couple of different sites where, especially corporate groups, if they're willing to pay a fee or a donation to volunteer with us, they can come volunteer with us.
And what kind of donations, in-kind donations you take? For example, you mentioned the closet, so perhaps you can just elaborate on that a little bit more.
So toiletries, socks, wipes, they help a lot for people that are on the street. Clothing of, pants, shirts, underwear. We have a lot of children, so diapers, formula, a lot of new babies that are coming through I don't even think they're in the system yet. Through the asylum seekers. So there's need for all of that. Not so much clothing. I don't get a lot of asks for interview clothing or business casual. The desperation is at really at ground level for the things that we need to give them. Shoes. Taking shoes is amazing. This winter, we're not getting coats from New York Cares, which is a big donor for us for the winter. They're not doing the coat drives and the coat donations this winter. So I need coats, and not small coats, not pretty perky coats. I need jackets that are large sizes because people need to wear layers when they're sleeping on the street.
Do you have a relationship with our city council member or any of the elected officials?
I
For
do.
example, okay, because I mean, I know, for example, I think that the city council office, Eric Botch's office, tends to do a coat drive every year, and just want to make sure that they're aware of your need for them.
Yeah, last year we gave out 2,300 coats. This year, yeah.
I might add just because the Union Square Green Market used to actually have a clothing donation spot, which disappeared at some point in previous years. Clothing donation, I know there's like always a lot of pent up demand. In New York, it might be worth talking to the Union Square Green Market organizers to see if there could be a short campaign you could run there and accept donations directly there, because again, it's a extremely populated multiple times a week. Usually the same people like farmers market, and so I think you can get a lot of movement through that. I mean, the clothing donation that was there used to get piles of clothing pretty much every time I walk by.
Okay, I'll definitely look into that. That's great. Thank you.
Ritu?
I was just gonna volunteer. I'm happy to put up a box in our lobby for coat donations. We have 261 units in our building. We've done this in the past. So I'd be happy to do that. And
I'd appreciate that because it feels like we're just heading into summer, but it's coming, winter's around the corner.
No, it's not.
For me, it is.
And we can certainly also share with the community board writ large, like this is news to me that you guys accept clothing donations. So if Teresa, if you can send us more information also about how people can donate clothing and where exactly.
And what kind of clothing.
And what kind of clothes, we can make sure it's included in the minutes as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
Are other questions? Yeah, Ryder?
Yeah, going back to the food pantry, so it sounds like no one who wants food is turned away.
Correct.
So I guess what do you think that there's more demand out there that where people just aren't aware yet that they could be coming? I guess what is the limiting factor? Maybe all the demand there is for food in that people could get from you is being met because people are aware of it and they come. So I guess I just wonder, do you think there's unmet need because people aren't aware of your offering yet? And then related to that, if 7,000 people are coming, how long, what's the average wait time? Because maybe people might come, except that they know they will have to wait for a very long time. And so maybe people are choosing not to come. I'm thinking of arguments to make to funders or to the city that maybe if you had double the staff, then the line could move twice as fast. And then maybe people who are choosing not to come because the line is too long. But I guess I'm just interested in that constellation of.
Yeah, so a person waits no more than 50 people will wait no more than 10 minutes.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
That's thanks to the Plentiful app, right?
That's because of the Plentiful app.
The Plentiful app allows you to make an appointment. So you make an appointment for a slot And I know that one of the interests that Teresa had before she began using the Plentiful app was that people would line up in the morning and leave their shopping carts there all day and wait for a very long time. And the Plentiful app really addresses that efficiently and also allows you, for example, to say, it's a snow day, we're not going to be there, or, you know, any kind of announcement that you need to make.
Right.
Other thing I'm thinking about demand is what I learned from seeing the Plentiful app is that there is an incredible constellation of food pantries all over the city, right? So
Right.
people who are using the app, one expects are familiar with, you know, Holy Apostle and the days that they are open, and they're making appointments all over. I mean, theoretically, people could have an appointment every day.
Yeah.
Is the speed of the line similar? I imagine for the ready-made meals, for folks who aren't using Plentiful, they're just lining up.
They're just lining up, but it goes pretty quickly because they're just signing their name. It's a ready-made bag. I'm not doing client choice, which slows the process down. I wouldn't be able to do this if I was doing client choice, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
It's just not doable for this amount of people. The volume is too great. But there isn't a way, the fact that that line it operates separately from the grocery line also helps. So there isn't a misidentification of what someone needs and how many people in the family, because when someone gets their appointment, they have to bring their phone and an ID. The ID doesn't have to be a driver's license or New York City ID. It can be any ID that has even an insurance card, you know, their benefits card. I will take anything, but the name has to match the ID to the appointment that they're going to show me on the phone. And then we use our phones and we use the browser, the web browser for Plentiful to check people off. And it's very quick because you put in the first few letters of the name and a bunch of names pop up at our pantry list, and we can just hit serve and they can get their food. That makes it faster too.
So on Tuesdays, just to reiterate, on Tuesdays, you have groceries and ready-made meals, which are in a bag, walk away. On Saturdays, you have the food pantry, groceries, and a home cooked meal?
No, it's only the
Home cooked meal.
the cooked meal, yeah. And it's always now in the summer the meals will get a little less hot. But like this weekend it's going to be curried chicken wrap with arugula and spinach, and they're getting Girl Scout cookies, because we got a donation of 300 boxes of Girl Scout cookies. But normally it's fruit. It's fresh fruit that we cut up. We make fruit salads. I grill, if it's pineapple and melon, we'll grill it and serve it as a dessert. They get drinks that are donated by City Harvest, so they get a variety of different beverages. So it's always changing, but right now the food gets a little cooler, and it's not just a bologna sandwich, a green, orange, and a little bottle of water. So it's still pretty cool meal. I must say so myself.
Are there any other questions or comments? Teresa, is there anything? I mean, I thank you so much. I mean, thank you so much for sharing this with us, and thank you so much for doing this for our community.
Thank you.
And the city's community at large. Thanks for coming by. I think we have covered everything that will be helpful for us.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you
I had
so
a-
much.
I didn't have a question. I just had a small request. Would it be possible to get any literature on just on the organization? If there's like a research report or even like a grant letter to kind of, I want to understand a little bit more of the data that you were talking about, and kind of just think through like how you collect data and potentially any additional ways that could be helpful to help you support that mission.
Sure. There are some city reports that we're on. I can look them up. I can send them to Susanna, and then she can spread the word.
That
Perfect.
sounds
Thank you.
You're
All right,
welcome.
I'll try. If I get them, I'll send them.
I actually, sorry, one more thing, the Girl Scout cookie thing made me think, like, would it be useful if for like neighborhood food establishments, bakeries, like to donate, should Levant Bakery donate 7,000 cookies? Like, because it feels like it's something that would be good for their brand and also would make the meals a little more fun.
Yeah,
So that, okay, that's something that maybe we can
yeah,
also.
like, Murray's Bagels gives us bagels every week, twice a week.
And that's different than, we had a conversation with Paul's Place, which is on West 14th Street. They are city contracted and they cannot accept those
Take
kinds
that
of donations.
food, yeah.
So you have a sort of freedom that a
Yeah.
city contractor doesn't have.
The only thing I don't accept is someone bringing me a home cooked stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
That gets a little hairy and scary. So I do accept stuff that
Commercial product.
is made by other organizations.
Cool.
All right, Teresa, thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a
Thank
great
you.
evening, everybody.
And now, Darren, you can come and join us. Now, why don't you come here, because it's very easy for the camera to see you. So, I'll let you introduce yourself. Our agenda item is just getting an update on Greenwich House, which is one of it's the Village Settlement House, founded, I thank you for the literature, at the beginning of the 20th century in 1902, and provides an array of services. We've often focused on the senior centers, where there's been a lot of change. But I thought we should discuss this more broadly and talk about other things that Greenwich House does. They also do some things that I think that are not really in our purview. For example, your pottery school, your music school, and your nursery school are less social services. for us.
I would suggest that arts and enrichment need to go alongside
Okay.
the most critical health and human services to have a
Okay,
full person.
I've been schooled. All right. So shoot,
Yeah.
introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about.
Yeah, good to be back. I'm Darren Block. I'm the CEO and Executive Director of Greenwich House. I've been in the position about 4.5 years. I'm thrilled to work alongside 300 amazing colleagues in the work, the majority of whom are women and people of color. To Teresa's point, and by the way, Ryder, just to your question about unmet need, about 1.2 million New Yorkers go to sleep food unstable every night. 1 in 5 children in the city goes to sleep hungry. So profound need in the city around food, and it all stems around poverty and how we support our neighbors. So Greenwich House, to that point, was founded in the early 1900s to support what was then the densest immigrant population in the country. And we continue to this day with a mission of serving the evolving needs of our neighborhood and supporting New Yorkers in a variety of needs. The interesting thing about Greenwich House is our founders, a little bit to the point a moment ago, and I wasn't being tongue in cheek. Our founders, amazing progressive leader by the name of Mary Simkovich, who was at the forefront of the settlement house movement, believed long ahead of the literature backing this up, believed that to have a truly fulfilling human existence, it wasn't just about serving the most basic needs of a person, whether it's food, whether it's shelter, health, mental health, but really wanted to see those critical services living alongside a menu of arts and cultural programs. And so Greenwich House, really in our early DNA, had that breeding of services. Today, that looks like us and our teams serving about 22,000 New Yorkers across a range of older adult services. So we run 4 older adult centers. Health and mental health services. We run a family mental health clinic, substance abuse, methadone treatment, and substance use disorder. By the way, interestingly, both of those clinics are about an 8-minute walk from Red Door down, just down Houston. Workforce training, and then workforce training services, and then to a little bit of the point of arts and culture. Alongside all that health and human services, we run a pottery school, a music school, a nursery school, and a mix of youth services, after school, summer camps, stuff like this.
So I wanted to ask about the substance treatment, because that's something that we haven't talked about in a while. And substance use, as you know, has become an issue that is on the forefront of concerns for our district and also for the city. I wanted to know if you are seeing trends in the population that you serve, for example.
Yeah, I mean, I think the trends that we've seen, and Teresa spoke a little bit to this, I think we were seeing a trend line towards opioid addiction and increased opioid use before COVID. And we were seeing an increase in mental health that is the trigger for most people dealing with any kind of substance use disorder, alcoholism, or otherwise. We were seeing that on the rise. So that was happening before COVID. COVID and everything that came with it really threw all that into hyperspeed. And so ever since the onset of COVID and even the melt, increased demands for services around mental health and challenges across every demographic: youth, young adult, adult, and older adult. And in terms of and seeing onset of additional mental health and behavioral health issues that are going outside of it and or triggering that. So we're definitely seeing those increases. In terms of other demographics, and it's actually not around health or mental health, but at our older adult network, and it's a network of four older adult centers. We serve about 2,000 members, 2,000 registered members across our older adult sites. And we're definitely seeing an increase in those sites from what had been an interesting mix of, I would say kind of everyday neighbors coming in and finding enrichment and friends and socialization and a meal and all these things, to neighbors with much deeper sets and richer sets of challenges, really around mental health and to some degree substance use disorder. So that is something that's a trend that we're seeing.
In that older population.
Yeah. It was, I think more than most of our colleagues doing older adult services, and there are about 400 or so older adult centers around the city. We were kind of an outlier because of the area that we're in, that I think a lot of the folks were finding this rich mix of enrichment and education and socialization, which is not to say there weren't pockets of need throughout. Always are case management, financial services, health, mental health services, but the increase coming out of COVID has been profound.
Really?
Yeah. So we're seeing that in terms of.
Are these primarily people who live in the catchment area, or are they coming from far and wide?
The majority, 50 some odd percent, somewhere between 45 and 55% of our patients, both at our methadone treatment, at our substance use clinic, and at our older adult centers, are from this. The Community Board 2's catchment area almost kind of maps right there. 14th Street down to Canalish, west of Fifth Avenue. And we're seeing about half within, and then if you look at a heat map, then it's all over. We have folks coming down from the Bronx, from Queens, from Brooklyn, from Staten Island. It's amazing.
The reason I was interested in this is because one of the things I've always wondered about seniors is this district is now one of the most affluent in the city, highest land values and so on, but it wasn't always that way. And, my dad's 98 and came to the village in the late 50s. I think it was cheap. And I am guessing, I have guessed, that there are a lot of people who came to this neighborhood when it was had a certain kind of profile. And they've stayed here, right, while the neighborhood around them has become wealthier. And I've always wondered if that means that there are pockets of need that we don't see on the street. I mean, we see, brownstones getting renovated, but we don't see, the needs of someone who is in a rent stabilized apartment that she's lived in for 60 years. And so I'm curious to know if you're seeing that.
Yeah. The answer is yes. And so and by the way, I know you started off wanting to move away from our discussion usually of older adults, and we're getting back to it, but the answer is yes. And that we're seeing pockets of need, but in this neighborhood, it's pockets. And I'll even double down more on a challenge for this community board, for anything you're doing on the discussion of how to engage the city. We literally do not qualify for a majority of city contracts from DYCD, from DOE, from ACS, from other agencies, because we live in an area where almost every objective measure, health outcomes, economic outcomes, criminal justice outcomes, education outcomes are
Very high.
very, very high. And it's because of those shifts.
Every average in our neighborhood is high, right? So what it doesn't reveal to us, and what I'm interested, it sounds like you get a chance to see, is the fissures within that,
Yeah.
you know, the.
Yeah, so for sure, we see, and actually, and we have a little bit of a dual challenge, because and we've confronted this as a board in the 4 years I've been there. What does it look like to continue to be a traditional health and human service organization serving New Yorkers, neighbors in need, when you're doing that work in a host community that has had so much evolution and success? And the answer is we try to be even more nimble than we might have been before, trying to offer a mix of services that will speak to the range of wants and needs across our neighborhood, whether that's something as simple as just needing a meal or needing some kind of really critical health and human service support, or whether it's finding an energetic, friendly, dynamic place to spend 20 years of retirement in a feeling sort of fit and engaged. And we're trying to serve both of that. The challenge we have is that there are for sure pockets of need. For us, it's around how do you
Get to them.
Yeah. How do you get to them, and how do they hear about us? It goes back to the point that, is Teresa serving as many New Yorkers in this neighborhood as she could if more people knew? This is not a unique problem to us. This is a problem for every business in the city. How do you connect with folks that might benefit from what you're offering, what you're selling, what you're providing, and just breaking through the noise in this town is tough. And so part of what we try to do is, we're using we have a partnership with those Link kiosks that, love them or hate them in terms of an eyesore on your blocks. They're a free mechanism or a low cost mechanism for us to try to show a range of what we're doing. We try to put a little bit of money into some kind of, social advertising. It's there. We try to flyer where we can. We try to find partners that might connect with these populations.
And so, the Department for the Aging shifted its contract model a number of years ago and allowed, tell me if I'm wrong, allowed a service provider to create a network of centers where they didn't each have to have all the same things. You could divide them among the network, right? So I think it's allowed you to have more specialization center by center.
Yeah.
Do you think that is what's contributing to seeing, are certain people with certain kinds of needs coming to one center versus another? Is that having any impact on what you're seeing on your clientele?
I don't think it has, but I don't, for two reasons. I think one is we ended up drilling down on only kind of one area of true specialization. So our workforce center at the 27 Barrow location really became an older adult, a workforce site focused on older adults in that contract. The other 4 sites still support a mix of services. There's a little bit of a lean maybe towards some arts orientation at our Westbeth site. There's maybe a little bit of an orientation more towards physical classes and physical fitness at our Lady of Pompeii at that site. Our center on the Square location on Washington Square North, probably has a little bit more kind of educational and enrichment pieces, but it's subtle. It's a little bit here, a little bit there. I think what we see more often is just where people gravitate to either proximity of where they're coming from or where they found clusters of friends. Yeah.
And so the need, when you say that you're seeing evidence of really more serious need, is just cropping up throughout the network.
Yeah.
Rita, you have your hand up. Sorry. Rito.
Sorry. I just wanted to point out that we have a comment from Teresa. She's very interested in your program for seniors, and she wants to know, how do you get to link with the kiosks, or how can she partner with you? because they have many seniors in the immediate area that are in need of help.
Oh, I'm sure we have clients that come to a lunch meal with us on a Tuesday or a Thursday, Tuesday, Friday, when she's open, and walk over and grab something there. I mean, we have seniors that come to one of our centers and then dip into another, because for many, that is their only meal of the day. So Teresa, I'll make sure I ping you offline.
Both seats
Yeah.
on the email that we shared, and perhaps you guys can make a
Yeah,
connection.
we'll put you in touch with our contacts at Link Kiosks and with our teams at the older adult centers in the neighborhood to connect.
Yeah, exactly.
Who is your, really like your target demographic? You're talking about serving the community, but everything, daycare to art, to elder center, do you strive on income, on any specific ethnic groups, on vulnerability?
I mean, truly, yes, and yes, and yeah, I mean, there is no, I think we aim to try to provide some kind of service, response, support to truly cradle to grave around an individual, a family, a child, an adult, an older adult, a professional, a retiree. I mean, we really strive to build something that responds to any number of needs we're seeing. In fact, the community board's statements of district need, we draw on documents like what you all produce to help us adjust and think about and respond to what should be next thoughts for us and kind of what we can spin out. So, it really has brought, one thing I do think about, and it's not to overlook neighbors who have the means and the capacity to come in and pay for a music class or pay for a pottery class, because we love offering high quality, high touch services. I think constantly about who are the pockets that maybe don't know about us and have a range of life challenges, and do they know about what we're doing, and can we get to that? That's what I think about all the time in our team, that how we're connecting with that. So like,
yeah, that's really interesting, because I think as much as yes, this area has become more affluent, and I think that also masks a lot of the problems that exist. And circling back to substance abuse, we are also among the highest concentration of bars in the city, and that there is an externality, not that I'm personally a teetotaler, but there is an externality to, a culture of drinking and drug use that is very pervasive, I think, in downtown. So would love to just hear a little more about, substance abuse treatment, substance abuse prevention, like how you're getting the word out to try and fit the needs that exist, but might be under the surface of the water.
yeah.
Can I add to that question, which is, we see a lot of people on the street using drugs, more than I remember seeing, having grown up here, which isn't to say that there are more, but I just notice it. And I'm wondering if they are people who are connecting with you, or if they are people who are absolutely not connecting with you. I mean, you guys, you have to want to have treatment before you go to but we've seen a growth of it in our district, and I'm wondering if you see a growth of it in your substance treatment.
So, I think anybody who's working or living in the city is seeing a growth of any number of street level challenges, and that's homeless and housing unstable, that's open drug use, that's severe mental illness, and frequently that's all rolled in to one person. When I've been in this committee before talking about this specific issue, was a lot around, we were working with Gail Brewer at a time around Washington Square Park. We've since been in discussion with Councilman Botcher, with President Levine, with friends at NYU, with other partners that are all asking the same question, with customers and patients and folks within our spaces asking, is there anything we can do, or what are we seeing? And it's a deeply unsatisfying answer, but what we're all seeing is the challenge of a human condition, and individuals who are often dealing with all sorts of trauma and genuine mental illness. And we have a system where our criminal justice system, unfortunately, is our main mental health provider. And so if Rikers is the only place where you can get a bed out of this, that's what our system has tended to do. And these are not folks who are specifically participating in criminal behavior. They're folks who are having a psychotic break. They're folks who are having, mental health, behavioral health challenges. So a lot of what we try to figure out is, and Suzanne, you hit the nail on the head. You're confronting a lifelong journey with trauma and want a fix that comes like that. And recovery, if anyone's experienced any member of a family or friend going through recovery, that's also a lifelong journey. And it's not a switch you can turn on. It's something that all you could do is keep sending signals, sending lines, and hopefully being there at a time when someone's ready to take that pivot and step and can come in and take that. And by the way, that's usually not just one step towards recovery. It's usually so proactively. So what does that mean in terms of, like, we're not just throwing our hands up, but so we have peer counselors who walk the neighborhood around in Washington Square Park, around Washington Square Park.
These are hired by the Center for Healing.
Yeah, that's Center for Healing. That's and that's part of our contract with the city and the state that's baked into our budget. It's not as many as we'd like, but that's a tool that we have. That's probably the most proactive piece that we do. Yeah.
I want to ask about quality of life impacts from the Center for Healing. I mean, technically you would think that people who are coming to the Center for Healing are people who have decided to take care of themselves, or people who are trying to live towards living stable lives. But over years, we have heard of people having relapses, or that there was a period when people came to our meeting and were concerned about quality of life impacts coming from people who were being treated at this, in other words, it's an imperfect treatment journey. And so they were seeing quality of life impacts around that.
Yeah, and actually, Zach, so and I think you asked a question a little bit about our population, what's showing up in terms of some of that. So there is no doubt that of the 1,000 or so, 1,200 or so clients that we support at any given time at our methadone treatment, at our Center for Healing, for sure, some of those neighbors are part of some of the individuals and groups that we see in parks or in corners or on this, no doubt about it. Because to your point, that journey looks all different for all sorts. And by the way, a substance addiction clinic, a substance disorder clinic is where kind of a vulture drug dealer is going to look. Or by the way, where some folks, will kind of swap out their methadone or whatnot. By all research and all eyes on this, it is still the most likely, highest chance approach to bringing someone through recovery. So for us, most of what our peers are, when they're out looking, or trying to kind of help kind of coach any clients that we know, that we see, any patients that we see, kind of back into the fold on some stuff and to be available for others. But for sure, I don't know that we've ever gotten a good count on whether that's 5 or 10 or 3% of whatnot, but I think it'd be.
But I mean,
Chris, not to think here.
Do you get neighbor complaints? I mean, I have.
Yeah, so we have regular meetings
Is
with.
it hard to live next to a methadone clinic?
Well, to give a sense of hours, most of our clients, we open at 6:30 in the morning. Most of our clients are getting their medicine before they go to work. So they're coming in, they're getting their medicine, they're going to work. We're closed by 12:30. So we usually have like an early shift and then a group coming in around 10 or 11, and then we're closed. So limited hours. But yeah, I mean, there are times where something goes sideways in our dosing space, and you end up now with a line on the on some Mercer Street on that side. Yeah, so I'd say a couple times a year there'll be a little kerfuffle or something because of that, and that's managed. We have pretty regular conversations with the local precinct, with the local bid, with block association, to try to be good neighbors in what we're doing. I love, just as a New Yorker, born and raised in Manhattan, Upper East Side, that we are a community that didn't protest a move of mental health clinics in this area, and the idea that every neighborhood deserves to carry a burden of the social infrastructure that we need. And we try to be the best neighbors we can.
You guys have a CAB, a community advisory board? No.
We don't have a community advisory board. The director of our clinic, like I said, has regular meetings with some of
Right.
the stakeholders, but we don't.
They don't have a form.
We have we're required to have a patient advisory group. So members of that clinic are part of the team, but not in.
Not a
Yeah.
CAB. Writer, Pete,
So thinking about advocacy we can do, previously, I remember back when I think at Gale Brewer's request, you were kind of the leader of a group of service providers doing outreach to Park. I don't know if that's still
We're helping coordinate.
the coordinator. And I think we asked for more funding for that. Like, where is the highest return on marginal investment if we could get more resources? Would it be more street outreach staff from the Center for Healing to go out into the community? Or maybe it would be totally different. How can we advocate for resources specifically, I think, on the street quality of life, like actually surveying their neighbors who are.
So I think if you ask most folks in the field and most elected officials these days, they've identified the main problem as there's not enough beds.
psych beds.
Yeah, I mean, this is, you can ask Eric, you can ask Mark, just anyone.
Kathy Hochul.
Yeah, it genuinely is, there's some kind of detox and psych beds on that end, and then supportive housing to take that next step after. And we just, as a city, have not nearly invested what you needed. The flip side, by the way, is just, I think at last count it was something like 4,000 street homeless, 4,000 or 5,000 street
like
homeless,
300.
right? And I say it because in a city of 8 million or so, it's a remarkably small number,
It's a very small number.
right?
Infinitesimal.
It's like 10% of.
And
the
for,
homeless population, less than 10%.
yeah, and for the challenge that population causes neighborhoods across Manhattan and some other pockets and outer boroughs, it's nuts to me that we haven't galvanized some energy
it's
to
hard.
just make a big
Sure.
investment there. But we could talk about outreach, we could talk about some of those supports, but what would be the game changer
Right.
is to keep bringing in big swipes.
But let's speak, can we just ask this specifically about what we could advocate for
Yeah.
Greenwich House? Because,
Yeah.
right,
Yeah,
Well,
budget requests,
yeah.
capital expense.
Yeah, so on capital or on?
Oh, we
operating?
get to make budget requests on
Yeah.
capital and on expense.
Well, let me just start with capital because we are blessed to be a nonprofit that was we're the caretakers of 3 homes. 46 Barrow, 27 Barrow, 16 Jones. And to not to keep citing Teresa's comments, but one of the things that I've found is the crux of a nonprofit challenge is about space. If I can find no cost or low cost space, the things that our team's creative force can bring to that is truly, it's beyond the scope of imagination. There's so much you could do. So I say it only to say we were blessed to be, to sort of have handed down these 3 sites. I have no endowment, I have no reserve to support those. And so we literally are just finishing up $1.7 million in capital in local law 11 repair to our 27 Barrow Street sort of main building. I have no idea how long it's going to take to sort of pay back the loans that we've had to take out to do that. But my point only is on capital dollars, anything that could support ongoing maintenance and investment for us or any other nonprofits that own property in this area is huge need.
Although I think that capital requests are like $50,000 and up. There was a week.
50,000 and up I can work with. 50,000 and down is a little more challenging, but 50,000 and up I can do a lot with
And
it.
would be capital to refurbish your building or capital?
Let me give you an example. I've got an elevator that's been in place for
There you
40
go.
years.
Okay,
I think, yeah, the more discreet it is.
I've got
Color.
windows that are horrible for their environmental envelope on our building. I've got roofs that need repair. I've got entrances that I'd love to make ADA accessible because they were built in 1902 and
Yeah.
don't have a ramp. I mean, it is,
Okay.
yeah. So
that is all in the transcript, and we'll make sure to include this because when October comes around, we're gonna be wanting to make specific
Yeah.
asks. Not that I mean, the common response we get to any ask is, no, we can't do this, but at least we've asked.
We sometimes get it. We sometimes get it.
Sometimes do. Key, you had a question. I
Yeah,
think.
I wanted to know about the whole housing situation. It does seem to me that a lot of this is about housing. And what is going on? Can we do anything about that? Or is that right?
I mean, housing is the one thing Greenwich House has never gotten into. So my only lens into housing is the general dynamics that what crushes our ability to do affordable housing is just the cost of land and construction in this town. And it's just that, and what was it?
Process. I mean, the process that adds to.
Yeah, process and bureaucracy, we can tend to get through. The challenge is just finding the space that you can get at a rate that makes the model work for affordable housing. And that it's just that.
I don't think our neighborhood is. Whatever, that's a whole other
We
conversation.
could, the city does around.
I wanted just to switch gears for a second and talk about the other area that we haven't talked about, which is your Center for Resiliency and Wellness. And you did school me and say, we've been doing this for a million years. It's not a new program, but you did just build out
Yeah,
a new
we
center,
expanded.
right? Okay, so could you talk to us
Yeah.
about that?
Yeah.
What you're finding with that?
Yeah, so since at least the 1960s, Greenwich House has had between 1 and 4 different clinics serving different populations. So we had a children's safety project that was working with children dealing with trauma and abuse. That was launched in the 70s. Folks who lived in this area, there was a Steinberg.
Yeah, the Lisa
Lisa
Steinberg
Steinberg.
murder
That
on 10th Street.
That inspired Greenwich House to create a children's safety program that ran for the 30 or 40 years since then. Children's Safety Project. We had a senior health and consultation working with older adults dealing with any number of challenges related to whether that was grieving, dementia, anxiety, or anything that was in that space. Yeah. We had a chemical dependency program, and basically what we did with the expansion that we announced recently that did you join us at that announcement?
I don't
Someone from
think I
community
did.
went through there. Was that we combined all those services into a space that provided all sorts of efficiencies, consolidated all those needs at once. So now we have a single clinic
At
and a
623
health at
Broadway.
623 Broadway that is serving, again, children, young adults, and older adults, families in group, in individual, in person, a whole range. And
Mental health.
all around mental health. So that's anxiety, that's depression, that's
You prescribe drugs?
yes. And we're looking to also start to integrate some primary health on site, which we're also doing with our addiction services, our substance use disorder services. So to try to provide, best models and any of this stuff is when you have interaction with a client, how many other things can you sort of bring in for good? So that's some of the work that we're doing there. And that's
There was a licensing issue of that too, right?
we're expanding our license to do some of the things that we just mentioned, whether it's primary health, primary care, whether it's medicating some of these things. So that was
The names of those licenses?
we're in Article 28, we're in Article 31.
Article 28 and Article 31.
Yeah.
I don't know what that means, but I think it's good.
Yeah,
to know that.
one is around methadone and substance use disorder, one is around mental health and supports there. And
you did a capital project for that, right? I mean, you did a renovation.
yeah, well, what we looked into, and I'm happy to, by the way, have this committee have a meeting at this site to sort of put eyes on it and to get a sense of it. But we, I don't know if folks know that neighborhood, but there was a Kaplan in capital, they did like test prep and stuff like this. So right before COVID, they had spent God knows how much renovating this space.
Oh,
And their entire business model got turned on its ear with COVID. And we were already on the 4th and 5th floor with our Center for Healing. Kind of worked out with the landlord. So we moved into this space that is just, it is, as anyone working in a nonprofit, this is an envy of the nonprofit. It is like tech bro space that you would just be jealous of in any setup. So we didn't have to deal with much of the capital costs.
built out.
But what that's enabled us to do is we went from about 450 or so clients working across some of those clinics to we're expecting to serve at least 750 at a time this year, and we think we can grow to about 900.
So let me just go over some numbers because you raised those. 750 for the Center for Resiliency and Wellness. How many did you say treatment for the healing?
It's about 1,200 to 1,400 at any given time. So that's not,
Right, not individuals.
Correct.
It's.
those are individuals at a given time, but there's several thousand that we serve over the course of a year.
And then your senior
About
community.
2,000 registered members in our older adult services.
Okay, and yeah, those are the three areas that interest me because those are the city contracts and you're not charging people for that. I mean.
Correct.
Right, they're.
Yeah, the other, I think, element to our funding stream, which helps us a little bit, is that unlike a lot of other nonprofits, we kind of have three legs of our stool. We've got city contracts like the older adult contracts. We've got some contracts with DOHMH and DOH and Oasis in the state, but we also do medical billing. So insured or non-insured, we're drawing down on some kind of medical billing. And then we have some of the fee-for-service work that we do.
Right,
That's
which is
tuition-based at a
Tuition
Pottery
based, the
music,
pottery,
yeah.
the music and the nursery.
Yeah.
Any questions out there? Rachel, Emma?
Yeah, for bringing in primary care, are you seeing any specific like projects, big grants for that work, or are you just bringing staff?
We're not right now searching for grants. I think we're just getting the licensure in place and and then identifying clients where that might be a benefit.
Yeah, okay.
I have one really random question and then a more substantive one. The random one is looking back at a report from a previous time you were here. There was a thought about shuttling people between the centers.
Yep.
Did that ever happen? What's
Yes.
the status of that? Have you do anything on that?
Yeah.
It did happen. So it didn't happen as part of our contract. It didn't happen in the original DIFTA contract. We put it in, they invited contract providers to seek that out. So this was this idea, to Susanna's point about, you have a network of sites and what would it look like to connect them through some kind of transportation. We asked for it in the contract, didn't get in the contract, but then we asked Councilman Botcher to fund a pilot that would allow us to kind of test the use. Yeah, is there, how are folks using it? And we got started a little bit late on this fiscal year, but we've got about maybe 8 months of work. I'd say so the neat thing is we got it up and we have a schedule where, 3 or 4 times a day, it hits all of our older adult centers, along with our workforce training center and a couple other kind of locations around the neighborhood. I think what we found is that, and it goes back to an answer that I offered earlier, that people tend to like the sites they're at. So unless there's something really drawing them to folks from West Beth coming up to OLP or folks from Independence Plaza down in Tribeca coming up to Center Square, unless there's something truly unique happening, they're going to kind of sit tight. But when we do programming, some kind of special programming at one of our sites, you're seeing folks jump on that shuttle and come around.
So that suggests that it might be a useful tool on a limited basis for specific, sort of event-driven basis, right?
Yeah.
Like performance somewhere or a special class somewhere, as opposed to having it as an ongoing service.
Yes.
Might not be as necessary.
Yeah, or as a means of, one of the things that we're noodling on are what are other types of sites around the district that people are interested in visiting. So is it a Trader Joe's? Is it a library? Some of those supports and offerings. So yeah.
my other more substantive question, although that was an interesting update. Well, it's just like, is there a shuttle? In terms of advocacy, you know, housing affordability, psychiatric beds, supportive housing, like there's some tools that we have as a community board. One thing that we do weigh in on though is the presence of safe haven and stabilization beds as an alternative to concrete shelters. Is that in the past, we as a committee and the board have endorsed certain, you know, the introduction of 24 safe haven beds into the community districts. At other times, we have opposed the establishment of the safe haven shelter, but I guess from your perspective, is that the kind of
When I've joined a couple of these meetings when that was a meeting, an item on the agenda.
Yeah.
And what I said then, and I'll say now is, you guys can figure out the nature of how they're coming into a district in the right way, but I will always say that is going to help.
Yes.
Our collective cause to try to figure out some kind of support system for neighbors dealing with severe.
You're talking about shelters, or you're talking
About
specifically about all of it?
Basically, any bed of any.
Yeah, any bed. Okay.
I mean, I can't stress, you know, so we've been doing this 120 years. And we're part of a network of nonprofits that have also, like, we're not alone in that. There's,
Right.
and
Street.
yeah,
flowers.
but you know, I don't know if Teresa's still on the line, and I don't mean to keep drawing on it, but what is keeping our neighborhoods together is this network of big and small nonprofits doing 1,000 little gestures every day that are trying to keep our neighbors moving, healthy, alive, functioning, growing, learning. So anything that contributes to trying to support folks that are struggling in some way and uplift them and get them back to right and on their feet. And all of that is transitional beds and longer term beds are part of that answer.
Is it?
We agree, by the way.
What about
We're.
And you guys have been stand up on it. You have.
Yeah, well, we have very little material to work with in this district. Very little material.
What about the discussion of local law 11 made me think about.
Oh my God.
Should we be advocating for
What is local law 11?
the shed policy that Mark Levine has proposed? Local law 11 is the requirement for facade inspection. That's quite onerous and expensive and requires a lot of scaffolding. And so there's some proposals from Mark Levine and some folks on the council, I think Boston might be involved in, to reduce the onerousness and regularity of local law 11.
Like the brick inspecting?
Yeah, so every 10 years, if you're a building
Yeah,
above
yeah,
6 or 7 stories, you have to have this engineering report and then come back and fix it. And it would be one thing if it was that simple. The crazy hidden cost in all that, aside from whatever the racket is of finding an engineer and bringing in all this, getting a scaffold and all that. The real racket is I do not have any control over my neighbors in this town giving me access to putting up a scaffold in front of their shop or putting up a scaffold on their roof so that I can, which I get is a hindrance on them in some manner, but I'm spending literally tens of thousands of dollars a year on engineering costs, legal fees, rent to allow my neighbors to give us access because of something the city requires, but will not put anything, will not fund and won't even enforce that my neighbors have to give me some kind of access to,
So respectfully, I think that might be outside the scope of.
Local
law 11 feels
interesting.
more like land use.
But I think this is revealing to me that local law 11 is the kind of city policy that is extremely onerous on service providers that are kind of the main constituency of this committee. And when we think, we've talked about speeding up approval of city contracts for there are things that are bureaucratic requirements or infrastructure that adversely affect service provision. It's true that local law 11 is.
But if
I mean, it also depends, it only is relevant if people own the building that they're operating out of, which is the case for you, but not the case.
And for the door, I think.
Well, what I was gonna say to Mary, my ask, suggestion, offer about a focus on capital needs for nonprofits that own buildings. I think one way to thread that needle is a reform of local law 11 that when a nonprofit that owns a building comes up is there some kind of funding that the city can provide if they're asking us to do this, and they're asking us to negotiate with their neighbors, and we're a nonprofit doing
God's work.
hopefully good work. It's
Yeah, it's not.
And there are a lot of ways in which.
It's also personal.
It's
No,
an
but I mean,
education.
it's interesting because when God's Love came to talk to us, and maybe again next month, they were very concerned about congestion pricing and the impact that would have on their ability to serve meal, on their cost to serve. So there are times when policies that seem far afield do have an impact.
Yes, absolutely.
On areas that we
ought
care
to make sure that those policies.
Trickle down. What else? We've, I mean, asked a lot of you. You've shared quite a lot with us, and thanks very much. I think that we're in great shape. We look forward to advocating for you. You're really the principal service provider in our district and have been for these 200 years. So thanks a lot.
Yeah, and all I'll say to that is, like, we take a lot of pride in being that. One of my frustrations coming in was, I was shocked as a born and raised Manhattanite that the name Greenwich House didn't resonate further. And I would invite this committee to feel a sense, I referenced the board, feel a sense of ownership as a social service oriented group, to spot and identify and push and nudge and agitate and suggest to me and our team what you're all seeing, because we'll look at those reports, but
well, we have a hard time, you know, we have an indirect relationship to our community. You see the pockets of need more than we see. We can bring a lot of kinds of people in. People don't often come in. I mean, it's something we want. It's our constant challenge is to try to understand what are the needs in the community, and we try to fill out through organizations that help people. But yeah, it's a constant challenge.
but we all work, live, play, and pray in the areas we see.
Yeah.
We see.
I look at my building and there are very rich people who moved in the last 10, 20 years. And there are some pretty, not really poor, but they're hanging in there. And every time we have a maintenance increase, there's this huge divide in the building because the rich people go, well, why can't we have a roof guard? Why can't we do this? And we have a lot of people who are gonna have to sell or leave or get out of the rent. So I think even within this, it's just a block away, there's probably 10, 20, 30 people who could use or could use your services.
Yeah.
And I get worried as I get more and more dementia in the next few years. I have money to take.
Ways to go, Rach.
Know that I have enough money to, a homemade if I can't take care of myself.
That's a whole other.
I don't know what happened.
Don't get me
Well,
started.
if you haven't yet, drop by one of our spaces. I think you'll be surprised. Thank you.
All right, I think we can wrap this up. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Thank you
thanks
to
all.
everyone who attended, and thank you, Teresa. And good night. We're gonna adjourn at whatever time. Oh, yeah, we're gonna adjourn the meeting. Oh, yeah, you're right. We keep going because we're gonna have business session, but you can keep staying. Correct. Thank you very much. We are now going to go into business session. Anyone is welcome to listen in, but the conversation will be only among members of our committee. There were just a couple of things I wanted to discuss. First of all, do we think that we want a resolution out of any of these things? I don't personally think so. I think that we do a report, and then when it comes to September and October, thank you so much. Thank you. We know what we have a sense of what we're facing. That was one thing I wanted to.
Yeah, I don't think there was any like urgent enough.
Okay, I want to ask another thing. So, we had scheduled a meeting with Bridget Brennan from the DA's office, and she had to cancel on us in April. And this is to do a thing on like the substance abuse, landscape. What?
But no, it wasn't specifically about overdose prevention centers.
No, it's not about, it's more about the landscape of, drug use and yeah, she's a special narcotics practitioner, and we're just trying to figure like, how do we get to the question of, that is the most obvious question to all of us, the one about substance abuse in Washington Square Park and the area around there and all that kind of stuff. And so one way that seemed interesting to do it was to talk to this woman who actually gave a presentation to Bach's office about all the trends that they're seeing. And I'm interested to know, like, you know, who are the dealers and what are they dealing and why are they still dealing and why, you know. Anyway, so I'm think it could be a very interesting topic, and they canceled for April and they offered July 27th. And my inclination, I first said yes, but now I'm inclined to say, let's do it in September, because I think that if we have any chance of people attending the meeting, no one's going to come at the end of July.
Is the intention that it be
That's good for
that it be more for community members than just for us?
Well, my hope, to tell you the truth, was that it was going to be a big, fat, well-attended meeting. In April, because Eric's meeting was so well-attended that they only took questions in writing. 3 days before our meeting was supposed to happen, we had like 4 people sign up. So that's lame. And that's the story. I mean, that usually we either have them super, super hot meetings or no. So I would so love people to come to this meeting, because I think it would be so informative on a topic that a lot of people care about. And I was thinking, I just feel like any families with children, they're just not going to be around at the end of July. I mean, so I wondered how you felt if I asked if she might be free at the end of September.
Well, what is she gonna talk about again?
She's going to talk about the scenario of substance use in the city and in our district. So arrests they've made, the drugs they're seeing on the street, what they're seeing in terms of usage and sales and arrests and crime, and you know, just sort of an understanding of what they see. Because we go to the subway and we see people use, we go to Washington Square Park and we see people who are down and out, and there's a certain amount that's visible, but we don't really have any data. Like, we don't know at all, like more people, fewer people. And of course, my question is always like, it's one thing to see people using, but like, how are these people selling drugs to them, and why are they still allowed to do this, and why have they not all been carted off? But that's me. So I just wanted to know how you felt about seeing if she could do September.
I think that's fine. I think the question would be like, what can we then do to drum up public awareness and interest? Do we get it on Link NYC kiosks? Like, if we want, we intend for it to be more public, you know, town hall style, then
right.
I'm honest.
We might be able to e-blast it sooner. Maybe we could start e-blasting it in July as opposed to. I don't know that she
Well,
can do
I
it.
worry that if we're gonna start talking about crimes and drugs in September, that we're doing something related to the election in November. I mean, that is sort
But
of
our
one,
city elections are,
but I'm talking about national. I mean, that somehow focusing on that issue, it doesn't seem to be the right time to focus on that issue.
Okay,
I just
although
worry about
I feel like our district is so blue that like it's not really a risk, but
I think-
I'm wrong. I'm not
it
very
would-
into,
I
I'm
think
politically attuned.
it depends how we would frame it. I think it depends how we would frame it, because I think
Well, that was,
if we framed it more as like a landscape of, you know, a landscape of substance abuse, and less the link between drugs and crime statistics, and have them, because I think part of the challenge is actually there's a lot of misinformation around like rampant drug use, rampant crimes. I mean, if you remember at the last community board meeting I was at, that it was like talked about that area in front of Stonewall as an open air drug market. So I think there's some re-leveling that actually we would all benefit from like, what are the actual statistics, and
to sort of.
how does this
area.
relate to reduce this?
Yeah, the DA has stats out, and they've put out information that serious crime like murder, for example, those are down. Those are way down, the serious crimes. The lesser crimes like burglary, for example, are up slightly. But I think we can get stats from the DA's office.
But I think we would want to be specific, not on crime in general.
No, and I think one of the concerns, one of the reasons that Bach's office made people write their questions is because they didn't want the meeting to become a litany of like on my street, you know,
Right.
I was walking by with my daughter and I saw blah, 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 blah. And I thought that maybe the challenge for us is to to frame this meeting in a way so that it's not a meeting about quality of life. It's not a meeting about what we should be doing about drug users. It's just an informative meeting that explains to us how things.
Don't you think that the policing part is part of dealing with is a whole social ecosystem of drug use and poverty and all this? And it clusters in places, so it becomes the quality of life thing. Crime, the police have one area, how do they help improve that? What are those, are they bringing social services in yet with cops yet or not? I've never quite gotten clear on that. But I think you can frame it as one side of how we improve a social service. Is that the cops are gonna be there and they're gonna be arresting people. How does that play into what we wanna see in our community?
Yeah,
So you frame it more as this a social.
my hope was to
Yeah, I'm
frame
not
it
sure
in
we
a
can do
way,
that,
my
but
hope
I'm-
was to make it less controversial, like not to make it a hot topic. Make it
But
a
you want a
topic
lot
of
of people to
interest.
come, which means that.
I'd like people to be interested, but I'd like.
And I'm also.
I think
it's like a Lansing,
A little,
right, like that.
It's hard to generate the mass public interest.
Yeah, out an emotional.
Sharon.
If it's not my little girl, just let somebody shoot.
It's not sensational.
But wouldn't we be interested in it? I mean, I guess the question is, what's your objective in having a lot of people there?
Very fair question. My objective in having people there was to the point that you just made, which is I think that there is a lot of, there's very little understanding of what's actually going on. We don't really have any data. We don't really know what the cops do. We don't really know what the DA does. We don't really know what happens to someone when they get arrested. We don't really know who's using, we don't really know anything except that you go on the subway and you see someone shooting up and it's freaking freaky. So my hope was to educate people.
I think
Yeah,
that's
but I'm not sure
great.
that
That might not.
education is what we should be doing in September.
In September.
I worry that we are going into the narrative of this country is going to hell, and here's another example. Because especially if the DA is coming, I mean, it's like that is their mission almost to say it's a serious problem.
You don't
Now-
actually mean the Manhattan DA. You mean like an
No, no,
ADA.
I mean, an ADA. She
Okay.
runs at the division at the DA's office. Well, listen, I mean,
I'm worried about
specific urgency.
Yeah.
Right, obviously, first of all,
the
we only serve in an
information.
advisory capacity. No one in the city has access for this. We don't ever have to do
We could do it later.
that. Wait, if you
We could
want
do
it, we could do it in
in
September.
After the.
What?
We could do it.
Makes much more sense to me.
Or we could do it in July.
We have,
Or we could do it in July.
I mean, or we could
I
do it in
would,
November.
as a person who works on democratic campaigns, I wouldn't be worried that us hosting a meeting in September here, in the CB2, Human Services Committee would be fodder for some sort of national narrative. But like, I can't imagine.
Well, I mean, I think,
Yeah.
every single one of us has to keep this in mind, or otherwise we're gonna be in trouble in November.
I think there are many opportunities for us to make an impact on November, far beyond our schedule of
So some logistical questions, so some options.
meetings.
We could do it in July. July is perhaps earlier in the campaign. It will likely be harder to get people to come. We can do it in September, if she can do it, and that runs into Keen's concern, which Ryder doesn't feel is a concern, whatever. October doesn't solve that problem. November and December are very tricky for us because our November meeting is after Thanksgiving and our December meeting is like between
That's
Christmas
it,
and New
it
Year.
is.
So like,
So move it into next year.
we could do it in January.
I do think the issue of substance use by people on the street in the district tends to be a very high level concern for people in the neighborhood. So if we have an opportunity to hear good information from someone who's highly expert on this, I think it behooves us to have the meeting.
Can we just do it in July?
I think let's do it in
July,
July.
just do it in July and call it in, and I'll e-blast it out soon.
I think that's.
Yeah.
All right.
What the date was? We're going
July 27th.
in July and January.
I think that's the
Fewer
thing.
people.
I
July 25th, I meant.
I think.
I said,
Would you be less concerned in?
I don't worry about July.
Yeah.
I'm
Okay, fine. I'm
It's
so
just
glad that we
September
had this.
Yeah.
We have a June agenda item.
Yes, so in June, we are running through more people that we need to
Updates.
talk to. So I think it's gonna be God's love and the door. So that's good. The topic, I wanted to talk about one thing that's personal, feeling about mine on the community board, which I'll raise just because I get a chance to. And I just wanted to say that the other very interesting topics that we have talked about, all require, we were chatting about this before the meeting started, they just require a lot of work to prepare. You know, like, and I have not been able to concentrate to delve into them, but they're there, and we're gonna be fine for June, we'll be fine for July. There'll be nothing in August. And I have to just, and maybe you guys can help, we can just need to flesh out some of these issues.
Yeah.
We need to flesh them out.
Did you get any of the article I sent you earlier today?
Remind me, because I think I did.
About vacancies for nonprofit staff, service provider staff, because of basically the thing we've been hearing about how it's hard to hire people.
Right.
The Center for an Urban Future just kind of a few dozen nonprofits and talked about how high their vacancy rates are because they are not able to hire people, given the budgets they have. So I thought that because it's not across many service providers, that we could have a meeting, we could hear from the Center for the Urban Future about the study, we could, or.
Okay, yeah, that's an easier topic to flesh out, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And I'm a supporter of theirs, so.
Statement last year, or was that just a resolution that we did about?
In the resolution about CUCS, we asked money for their staff.
I mean, I think it's something that would end up in our statement distributive needs. It's not really a specific budget request.
Yeah.
But, I mean, you know, and who.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a money problem. It's also, I think it's a pipeline problem. I don't think there are enough social workers.
Yes,
I don't think there are enough.
in fairness, Eric
Right.
Botcher has identified that. I mean, he has identified that as a problem. I mean, to what extent he can, okay.
We
So
can
we have a
add
plan.
Yes.
So we have a plan.
And what
We have a plan
about
for June, we have a plan for-
healthcare aides?
And the healthcare aides is a tricky subject, and that really needs research.
We could do
So-
composting in September, because theoretically it's supposed to start in Manhattan in October.
That'd be good.
So we could aim for that. It's also gonna take some work, because I think we want to make sure that they're able to give us the right information for us
Okay.
to have a conversation. So I think we may have.
Susanna, what about the closure of Beth Israel in July?
Oh, we are so,
Yeah,
That's
I thought it wasn't being closed because the state said no.
no, the state has not said no, it's gonna close. Well, if we did that, it would need to be June, because their closure date is July 12th.
I mean, I don't think we can affect it, but I think that basically they're gonna try to turn that into a real estate venture. And so how can we engage the community to learn as much as possible and to act on our own behalf, really, and our neighbors?
Well, I'll tell you, there is a consortium of people that talks every Monday. I have attended some of those meetings, but not all of them. It's organized actually by union members, I think, which have a very, one specific, their interest. And Arthur Schwartz has initiated a lawsuit that has made some headway, but it's not really clear where that's gonna end up. Lately, the Department of Health went back to MSBI, Mount Sinai, Beth Israel, Mount Sinai, and said, we don't approve your closure plan, we need more information. But now my understanding is that MSBI has provided that information. I think that the big problem is that we have not had any evidence that the DOH actually scrutinizes the data that's in the closure plan. That's a big, but that was a battle that had to be fought last year. And, and we tried to have a meeting about that, but it was circumvented by the lawsuit, which is fine. But that was my aim, was to put.
Was not.
I didn't think it was fine, but it's not, we're just, whatever. Anyway, it is.
You
what
did
it
your
is.
best, I know.
I did my best. And he's got a lawsuit, and maybe the lawsuit will be hugely effective, so I have no idea. But, so I'm not really sure what the community, whatever that is somewhat engaged in that the electeds are involved. they've had some rallies, people have shown up, they've gotten some press. You know,
But
I
I
just-
think the thing to focus on now is not the closure, but how do we make up for lost services, number one, and two, how do we stand in opposition to any divestment by Mount Sinai to a developer?
well, for one thing, I mean, they can sell a building and that's not divesting services. They would take that money and invest it into their whole network. I mean, whether that, but I think you raise an interesting point, which makes me think of this, which is they apparently, one of the upshots of their closure or their revised closure plan is that they're going to be making some investments to health and hospitals, H&H,
To Bellevue.
to Bellevue.
They're gonna remodel or renovate their emergency room. And a couple of other things. I mean, nothing major.
So what do you think about, instead of having a meeting before the hospital closes, having a meeting in early spring and trying to get someone from H&H or MSBI to talk about those plans? Do you think anyone will, I mean,
In spring of next year?
yeah, because what's gonna happen is the hospital's gonna close, right? It's gonna, I might be naive and I might be a cynic, so forgive
No, it's
me.
gonna close.
I think it's gonna close.
It's gonna close in July.
And so once it's gonna close, the dust is gonna be flying for a while, and it's gonna take some time before whatever this promise consists of, anyone gives it any thought, right? They have to do a whole bunch of stuff before they can even think of the next chapter. So I'm thinking realistically, if we were to ask someone to come in July or in September and tell us, so what's the plan gonna be with H&H? I'm not sure anyone's gonna have anything to tell us. But you who are on the cab could ask that at your next Bellevue meeting, and we could find out when that would be a good thing to ask about.
Okay, I'll do that.
Because I agree, I mean, I do think we need to pressure, but yeah, it should show.
But I think that could be a resolution that goes out to the mayor, to all the electeds, et
Well,
cetera.
mostly to the state. I mean, it's a state
Yeah.
issue, and so that would be, so that's down the road. Okay, I want to just, yeah, sorry. What were you saying?
Oh, I said that's really cool.
Oh, I thought you were going to say something. I want to just say a personal thing. So we had this discussion last week at full board about lowering the age of voting, okay, to 16. Okay. I was against it, whatever. My point I wanted to make about that is, what really upset me about that is that a committee heard from an advocacy group, one advocacy group expressing their opinion, and walked away echoing that opinion. And to me, that is bad process. If you're going to take an advocacy position, it's one thing to advocate for a social service provider, but if you're advocating for policies, I feel like they need to be treated in a well-rounded way. And I was ruminating this and thinking that's what was wrong with this. And then I thought, well, have we ever done that? Because you notice it when it's a policy that you disagree with, but if it's a policy that you agree with, maybe you don't notice that you haven't heard from other sides. So I just wanted to put that out there because I think that it behooves, I mean, I think it behooves everybody, but for certainly in this committee, if we ever start to make that error, I hope that we'll check ourselves or check me or check whoever's doing it so that we ensure that anything that's controversial gets an airing from different sides and not just from an advocacy group, because that's my piece. I don't know if you want to discuss it or whatever.
Here.
I think I really appreciate you voicing that and like making this a space where you have opened the door for us to say that. So thank you.
Okay. I mean, I don't want to say it in terms of that specific issue, which is gone. It's just more of a process issue. Okay, anything else? Either?
Yeah, that's something that Probably should have been said at that meeting.
I did say that, but yeah.
No, I
Other
think
people said other things.
I actually, that's something that I wish I had pieced together at the committee meeting. And I think, yeah, I appreciate you pointing that out because I reviewed the resolution that was pre-drafted in advance. There were many citations in that resolution, but I did have the opportunity to look at them. And I don't think the full board, like, I don't think that opportunity was really presented to members of the full board, just given timelines of life, et cetera, et cetera. So I thought that that context was important and it's something that like was a learning for me personally, and that like I will take that eye kind of moving forward. So
Yeah,
I mean,
actually very much appreciate that.
to that point.
yeah.
And I think you challenged a little bit today on the, like, thinking about the neighborhood impact of methadone clinics.
Yeah.
I wonder if sometimes we could proactively invite some guests.
Naysayers. Yeah.
As in, like, you know, we never hear someone who's from a business improvement district who would probably have very different opinions than I think the speakers who are coming from social welfare, but are looking at the same topic from the other side. Not to say that we want to foster a debate back to back, not at all, but rather just understanding their perspectives. And they have a different group of stakeholders, small business owners, you know, potentially landlords, tenants, and who are having different experiences with the same issue. So just something to put out there that we
That's a
could
really good
think about.
point.
I guess, so having thought about it a little bit more for these last 2 minutes, I think your angst is a point well taken, or your articulation of the intellectual interpretation of the angst you felt. I think we have, having been on the board on and off for 5 years, I have seen many committees pass many resolutions with different origins. And I think we have some things that I would view negatively that came from advocates. But then I also think I can think of good examples of advocates coming to bring our attention to things that are not on our radar, where they are the local experts that are relevant to the community, and where they are representing voices we would not otherwise hear because they are voices that are not otherwise represented on the community. So I think specifically of a resolution we passed at what was formed then known as the Quality of Life Committee about street vendor permitting. And the status quo was very negative, where street vendors were renting permits. There was a cap on the number of permits. People owned the permits, weren't vendors themselves, but would rent the permits for tens of thousands of dollars a year. And the street vendor project, which is a set of advocates for street vendors, came to educate us on that state of the world. And there was a law being considered at the city council about raising the permit cap. And we ultimately passed a resolution in support of raising that. And like that, I think that perfectly aligns though with, like, it was an advocacy group that came, we passed a resolution. Like it is bad process for if that is the.
It's just a thing that I'm thinking about.
So I think like.
It's like, because there are a lot of advocacy groups are gonna come and you're gonna be like, that makes so much sense. I'm so glad to know about this. And you're absolutely right. And we support you. And because we don't have those direct contacts, for example, I mean, I'm thinking of substance use, so to speak, right?
Yeah.
The bids I know, because I know this from the Village Alliance and from the West Village bid, the stores really do have a serious problem with all that. And I guess that the thing that's hard when it's a topic that you're not very familiar with is to even think about who's on the other side or what's right. And that's all just part of an intellectual exercise or discipline, I should say. It's an intellectual discipline that is hard to practice, I think, but I do think benefits the public.
And I do think some topics lend itself more to the two sides or the opposed or different viewpoints. I think 16-year-old voting is something that you really need to hear about from multiple sides. That's absolutely.
But I think to that point where we struggle, that's something it would be good for us all to get better at, is like to actually think through a little bit of the externalities.
Yeah.
And I mean, like even that street vendors are great, except they're also like having a diesel generator that's at street level. Like I have multiple near me on my block, like for people who live on the ground floor. It's like there are a lot of, it's not necessarily.
It's tricky though, because like, for example, you could say that about homeless people, right? There are people who are doing outreach on homeless people. You could certainly get people to come and say like, my children are terrified, that guy's a pig, I don't want them in my neighborhood. You're not gonna do that thing where you're always reaching for
Right.
the lone.
I mean,
the voice of the
when we were considering street vendor thing, like we heard from people who were very critical of vendors. We heard from the meatpacking bid.
Oh,
That was
Right.
very, like, I think our forums are often spaces where people of all sorts voice their perspectives. But.
Yeah, very often that happens as like a natural process. People come to the meeting.
Exactly, yeah, so but I would be
Never
wary
gonna
of the idea that we always have to have like.
Yeah.
Find the red and the.
No,
blue, Like find the sides.
No, I don't think there's always having to find the red and the blue, like they do in some lame news stories,
Right.
you know, where you're always finding like the one lady who
Right.
really hates it, you know, it's not that, but it is being sensitive to,
Yeah.
am I buying somebody's
Pitch.
pitch?
And what's your own cognitive bias? And
Yeah.
are you falling for it all the time? You really, it's
It's just interesting. I just wanted.
I think what I really wish for the board, for many boards around the city, is to understand, to view as advocacy opinions that we often take as simply representing the community.
Mhm.
I remember where we once had a meeting that was and it's supposed to be education about the landscape of housing affordability. And the presentation was given by a preservationist group. And that was perceived as neutral, when
Right.
clearly preservationist groups that are advocating for a specific state of the world. For good or for ill, but like that.
Oh, I mean, you know,
That as advocacy
I-
would be helpful.
I have examples of the ones that your call. I remember going to a meeting about the Elizabeth Street Garden where there were 5 million people advocating for the Elizabeth Street Garden. And I was like, well, you can't have the stakeholders who would live in the housing that would be there because their housing doesn't.
Right, they're not there.
They're out there somewhere, but so it's just, yeah, I just wanted to make sure that this committee, which deals with humans and
service.
people, services, that we are sensitive to that. That's.
I think
Thank you.
at least half my building is sure that all the guys outside the subway on Houston Street come from the methadone clinic. Yeah, I mean, at some point I stopped trying to argue them out of it.
All right, do we end?
I'm sorry, we are now adjourning.
Thanks, y'all. Great meeting.
Thank
Love
you.
listening in.
Hi, good night.
Thank you, Arthur.
All right, so what am I supposed to do? Oh, you did all that. Oh, that's so good. No,
I tried to, it didn't end.
end webinar.